Hezbollah has warned Israel there could be a war if the IDF launches a potential offensive against Lebanon. A warning comes from Chief Hassan Nasrallah, who says it will no longer be restraint, no rules and no ceilings if Israeli forces make an incursion. The statement comes amid soaring tensions at the Lebanon-Israel border after Israeli officials reiterated that the country is ready for an all-out war against Hezbollah. Earlier this week, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz raised the prospect of a serious conflict with the Lebanese group after Hezbollah released surveillance drone footage showing important infrastructure and military sites in northern Israel. However, the group's leader noted that what is being said in the Israeli media about a war in Lebanon does not scare Hezbollah fighters, and if there's any party that needs to be scared, then it should be Israel. Well, Israel has responded to that threat by the Hezbollah chief. The government spokesperson, David Mencer, has described Hezbollah as a deadly terrorist organization, calling its recently released footage a propaganda. Mr. Mencer says Hezbollah's aim is to instill terror in the Israeli people, adding that the country will do whatever it can to protect its sovereign territory. He also doubled down on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comments on the U.S. withholding weapons for the war in Gaza, indicating Netanyahu has the right to express his thoughts.
Hezbollah propaganda film. Yes, it is a Hezbollah propaganda film with all the aspects of Hezbollah propaganda that we have become used to by now. Look, this is a deadly terrorist organization, the Iranian-backed terror organization that seeks to instill terror on our people. They have already rained down more than 5,000 rockets, projectiles, UAVs, deadly suicide drones, mortars on our northern border and on northern Israel. They've displaced many people, more than 60,000 from Israel's north. But we've made absolutely clear that one way or another, diplomatically or through military means, our northern border, the north of our country, Israeli sovereign territory, will be made safe for Israel's population, Israel's people, to return there. This is, of course, an Iranian-backed terror organization, Hezbollah's usual mischief-making propaganda films. No one should be surprised at that point. But we know what Hezbollah are about, and we know what their capabilities are, and we know precisely how to deal with them. One way or the other, diplomatically or through military means, this threat will be dealt with, and this country will be defended.
In another development, over 200 pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside the Dutch parliament in The Hague, denouncing the war in Gaza. Protests come on Wednesday after lawmakers invited Israeli delegates to the Netherlands to speak about the humanitarian situation in the besieged Strip. The demonstrators, who were angered by this move, clashed with police who were deployed to enforce order.
We're gathered here today to make a strong statement against the visit of the Israeli delegates to speak about the situation and the humanitarian aid in Palestine. We're here to show them that they are not welcome, not in the Netherlands, not in the heart of our democracy. We don't want them here. I feel we succeeded, even though they had the meeting. They had it online because they were scared to come here. So that is a win, in my personal opinion, and we'll keep standing here until Palestine is free.
After a while, we were sent away, and we were not given our right to be within the hearing and seeing distance as much of the people that we wanted to protest against, which was, of course, our most important thing to do to get our message across. So we hope they still heard us and they heard about us, and they at least understand that we do not agree. We, the people of the Netherlands, do not agree, and our government should take that message. We do not agree with any type of using of sticks. And it got out of hand with some police officers. I'm sure there will be actions against them later, legal actions. But in general, it seemed to go okay, apart from not being able to stand freely at a place where we were peacefully protesting.
I want to bring you now the VOA's Linda Gradstein. She's in Jerusalem. Linda, before we go into the conversation proper, I want to get your thoughts, on these pro-Palestinian protests that are becoming even more visible around the world, and we're seeing less and less of pro-Israeli protests. These protesters are saying that the government's not listening. I mean, what exactly do they want? A call for an end to the war, but how come there are no protests against Hamas, the group itself that attacked Israel on October 7th?
Well, I think there's a sense in Israel that people don't really understand the situation. They don't understand that on October 6th, there was no war, that Hamas started this war. But I think that there's a sense among a lot of people in the world that if you look at just sort of the proportion, the number of Palestinian civilians who have been killed and the Israeli response. And so I think there's this sense that the Palestinians are the underdog, not necessarily Hamas, but the Palestinian people. And so what they're demonstrating for is, first of all, a complete ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israel from the Gaza Strip. And I think the sense in Israel is that, people don't really understand, all of these protests, for example, on college campuses in the United States with people chanting from the river to the sea, which in Israel is seen as a call to wipe out the state of Israel. When they ask these protesters what river and what sea, they have no idea what it is and what it means. And they said, well, it's a call for freedom for Palestine. But it really is a call, if there really is a Palestinian state from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, that means that Israel doesn't exist anymore. So I think, there is some concern in Israel, but they mostly feel that it's based on a certain level of misunderstanding by the protesters.
Thanks for that, Linda. And now to, the threats from Hezbollah, which Israel is facing. Israel has always been threatened by its neighbors, always been the target for many militant groups, many terrorist organizations, and now Hezbollah threatening the IDF, as saying that if the war does if there's an incursion of this war into Lebanon, then there could be an all-out war, and there will be no restrictions, there'll be no rules, nothing. What is this all about?
Well, first of all, the day after the Hamas attacks, in other words, on October 8th, Hezbollah started firing rockets and missiles at Israel as a way of expressing solidarity with Hamas and solidarity with the attacks on Israel. Israel responded, and that's basically been going on for over 8 months now, with dozens of people killed on both sides. Israel says that it's killed more than 100 senior Hezbollah officials, including just today. However, in the last couple of weeks, there's been sort of a sharp increase in the tensions, where Hezbollah has fired deeper into Israel and has sent attack drones into Israel. Israel has responded even more heavily, and about a week ago, Israel assassinated a senior Hezbollah official, and Hezbollah responded with 200 rockets. So there is a sense that both sides are kind of inching closer to an all-out war. And an all-out war for both sides would be incredibly destructive. I mean, Hezbollah has 150,000 rockets, including precision-guided rockets that can hit all of Israel. Israel can cause a tremendous amount of damage, both against Hezbollah and against all of Lebanon. Lebanon's a very small country. And so both sides are kind of warning each other. And as part of that, Hezbollah released a 9-minute video of that one of its drones had taken of Israeli infrastructure, including the port in Haifa, and kind of warning, that saying that they know exactly where all these sites are and that they will hit at it. At the same time, I don't think it's in anybody's interest, whether it's Lebanon, Hezbollah, or Israel, for there to be an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah. For Israel, it would mean having to fight on two fronts as the Gaza fighting is continuing, with an army that's tired, with people who are getting their third reserve call-up since the war started. So there's and the Israeli public is really kind of tired of war. There are growing protests in Israel against the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that he's failed to handle this war the way that he should, and calling for new elections in Israel. So on one hand, nobody really wants a war. At the same time, they're inching closer to an all-out war.
Yes, so they're wary about another war, another front opening up in this war. And Hezbollah is an Iranian-backed terror organization. David Mincer made that really clear. It's a terrorist organization recognized all over the world. If Israel does go out to war with Hezbollah, it would be going out to war with Iran as well, and other Arab neighbors who have some stake in this. Just wondering, how the Israeli people feel, apart from being wary that, there could be another war. Are there concerns, that Israel could eventually be hit by these attacks, not only by Hezbollah, but other terrorist organizations who might take advantage of this to also take on Israel?
Well, for example, Iran, for the first time in April, fired dozens of missiles at Israel directly, and it's the first time that that's happened. And there were no casualties, but Israel's concerned about that. It's concerned about the Houthis in Yemen, about the Iraqi jihadist groups, which have been occasionally firing missiles at Eilat. But I think, Israel's main concern is an all-out war with Hezbollah, which is a significant fighting force that's trained and that is well trained because of the fighting in Syria, and whether Iran would get involved. And then the question would be whether the United States would get drawn into this conflict if there was a regional war. So definitely there is concern about what could happen. President Biden's envoy, Amos Hochstein, was in the region this week. He talked to both Israeli officials and Lebanese officials and trying to kind of calm the tensions between them.
Speaking of the U.S., Linda, is there still support, from the U.S. government? I mean, with the Prime Minister saying that the U.S. has not supplied weapons for some time now, the U.S. saying we don't understand what you're talking about. We have always provided weapons. We provide more than $9 billion worth of weapons to Israel on a yearly basis. Is there any confusion about where exactly U.S. support lies?
No, I don't think there's any confusion. I think the U.S. government support, at least, is clearly in favor of Israel. The U.S. President Biden has been unabashedly in favor of Israel. And I think this thing about the weapons, it's apparently referring to one weapons shipment. And there was a lot of controversy in the Israeli government with some of Netanyahu's advisors suggesting that he not say this. And I honestly, the whole thing is very strange to me. And, at the same time, Netanyahu is set to address a joint session of Congress towards the end of July, with some of the Democrats saying that they're going to boycott that session. They're going to walk out. So I think it's clear that President Biden has been very supportive of Israel. The Republicans are very supportive of Israel, but there's a significant Democratic faction that is not supportive of Israel.
And while I have you, Linda, early in the week, the Prime Minister announced a dissolution of the war cabinet with Benny Gantz and his other ally leaving. Who are his advisors now?
Well, his advisors now are his defense minister, Yoav Gallant, as it has been. And the truth is that, and his, personal advisor is somebody named Ron Dermer, who he's very close with. And there was sort of debate in Israel about whether Benny Gantz and Gadi Ashkenazi, two former chiefs of staff, did the right thing. In other words, were they providing a more moderating influence? It's not clear. Netanyahu dissolved the war cabinet partly because he did not want to put on the extremist allies in his coalition, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. However, there are definitely cracks in the governing coalition. Interestingly, less over the war and more over issues having to do with drafting the ultra-Orthodox to the army. The law that gave them exemptions has now expired. So more on religious issues than on diplomatic and state issues. But some Israeli analysts say that, the Israeli government is moving towards falling apart and that there will be new elections in the next 6 months or so.
Thanks again, Linda, and do stay safe.
Thank you.